Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be working on some grapevine pruning. We have 4 grapevines right behind me that we're going to be working on. They're a complete mess. And then probably some more flower bed clean out. We're to that point of year where we're going to start mulching. In fact, Paul just started mulching in the area around the kitchen and it's looking really, really good. And maybe we can show you that at the end of what we get done today. But we still have a little bit of rose cut back, got some buddleias to cut back, mostly shrubs. I think most of the perennials are done at this point. Also, it's windy, so I do apologize if the audio is a little bit rough today. Here are the grapevines. We've got 4 of them here, and you can see that they're pretty short, pretty young at this point. But we had this structure installed when we put in our berry beds, which are just to the left here. When we installed these, we had a wire cable put in the bottom, and then we had a second one put in right here, which is just over 5 feet, with this huge gap in between. So last week, Paul came through and he installed a middle cable. So we are going to go for a 3-layered sort of look here because I wanted it to be a little bit of a grape wall. And here's a look at the parts that we used. So this is a 4x4 post. And this is, I do not know technical terms. There's like a, is this an eye bolt? I don't know. There's a circle here, it goes through, and then there's a nut and a washer. And then we have wire cable here, which there's this piece. This is what allows us to tighten it as tight as we want it to be. And so the wire cable just goes through the rest of the 4x4 post until it gets to the other end. And the other end looks just like this one here. So we're definitely not pruning them like a commercial grower would, who, usually they adhere to a very precise system because they get machines in there and they need to be, it's for the ease of machinery and for, maximum production as well. But as a home grape grower, you can get away with growing them a little bit differently because a lot of people like to grow them over pergolas or arbors or in a shape that's a non-traditional if you're to compare it to commercial growing. I want to say most of the time they either have like 2 or 1 with the grapes instead of having 3 rows. We've got 2 white Niagara grapes, which are a white seeded. They're delicious. The nickname for them is the White Concord. Wonderful juice. You can see I harvested all of them off this one and didn't get to all of them on this plant here. There's still some grapes left over. And then these are a Suffolk Red, which is a red seedless table grape. Really sweet, delicious. I love them. But if you get in here, you can see that I should have started training these a long time ago. The trunk is kind of gnarled and twisted, and it's going to be incredibly difficult to train this back up so it's more of a vertical. I didn't prune these at all last year, which is very evident in how they look at the moment. But winter, late winter, early spring is the best time to go about pruning them because when they're dormant, it's easier to tell older wood from newer wood. And grapes do produce they produce fruit on canes that they produced last year. And they won't produce grapes on wood that have already produced grapes before. So we want to make sure to get all of that out. So while these are not the best examples to be showing you guys, it is something that I need to address. Let me show you the different parts of the grape because there's 2 basic methods of pruning. One is called cane pruning and one is called spur pruning, but I guess first here's the parts of the grape. So you've got your trunk, you've got your cordons, which are usually trained on your wire. They're not usually this low. And then you've got canes that grow off of your cordon, and that's what produces your fruit. And your grape plants will look different depending on what method of pruning you choose, and maybe we can pop some pictures up on the screen of what cane pruning is versus spur pruning. I'm probably, in the end, I'm hoping to do spur pruning because I think it's going to be just a little bit more of a set shape for my plants. When you cane prune, let's go back to that, you typically are cutting everything off your plant except for 2 canes that are growing in the natural direction of your training wire. And they usually originate just below your first training wire. And then you take those canes and you pull them over and either tie them off or wrap them around your training wire. And those canes have buds that will produce fruit for that year. The spur pruning, you've already got a branch, a cordon on your training wire, after you initially have trained them up the way you want them to be. And then you've got canes coming all off of those cordons. So then you go through and you cut those canes back to 2 buds, just above that second bud, and that's where you'll get all your fruit. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for because I want to have the structure of the grape plants even in the wintertime. And honestly, that's just the way my parents had pruned theirs, and they always looked really nice. And we got tons of grapes. They still have them. I think those grapes were there when we moved into the house in 1990, and they're still going for it now. And that's what good pruning will do for your plants. And they've always said you want to cut your plants to where you get them to a point where you think you've killed them, and then cut more. And I think the number you look for is cutting away about 80% of your plant. I think they even cut away more than that. So no matter what we do today, I don't think we'll kill our plants. I think we're just going to get them on the right road to hopefully a good shape later on. They probably won't look great today. So the goal is just to come in here and just start hacking away at these things, clearing away all the grapevines that are growing on the ground. I don't want that. So we know that. We need to get all that stuff moved off of them. And then I need to see how pliable the big branches are here. These are cordons coming off of the trunk down there. I don't think I'm going to be able to, Douglas is out here now. I don't think I'm going to be able to pull those up because the wood has hardened. So it might be a situation where I just have to pick one of the canes and let that grow up, or I might cut the whole thing back. I don't know. We just need to get into it and I don't know, hope for the best. Also, here's what I'm using today. I've got a pair of loppers because I know I'm going to need to take off some thicker branches. I've also got my Felco 2s for all my regular cutting. And then to tie off our branches to the guide wires, I've got this kind of rubber coated wire. I love it because it doesn't damage the branches. I've got some thicker stuff here and some smaller stuff. And I also have these foam wire ties, which work well. I would rather use the brown though because it kind of disappears, and then I got a bunch of these if I run out. Oh, and a kneeling pad. And a Douglas for company. Okay, I'm going to try to capture this process as best I can. We'll see how they look in the end, and this is going to be a faith and pruning project today. Okay, we're done with the first one. We're just going to have to call this an experimental pruning year or two to see if we can recuperate these. Honestly, at this point, if you wanted a specific shape and you really wanted that very straight trunk up to your first training wire, I don't know, I would probably start all the way over. These aren't super old grapevines, so it would be a good time to do that, but we're just going to give this a shot and see what happens. So because I neglected to prune these last year, you know, the trunk comes out and then it's split into kind of two main branches here, two main cordons, which are now too hardened off to train. I tried to put the bamboo stake in and I tried to pull it back, but there's no pulling this back. I left two branches, so this is kind of like a modified cane pruning here, but usually what you have is a trunk that comes up and then you've got the two canes that are like this that come off of the trunk at this height, and then you train them one side to the other, kind of like these are now. Yeah. And maybe at this point I should just cut this one off, but I'm thinking if it produces anything that I could possibly train to be a straighter trunk, I'm just going to leave it for now. We can cut it out later or replace the whole plant if we need to. Now there's two more that are very similar to this one, and then I think the last one will be our closest grapevine to looking like it maybe should look. But see all these buds? When you cane prune, you've got tons of buds along your cane that will produce fruit, as opposed to like spur pruning, you've got your cordon, and these are older branches too, so I should probably just cut these all the way back. But this one's got two buds off of a cane, so you can see this older branch, and then this was a newer one. You can see where it comes off right there, and then I cut it just above that second bud. There's one bud, two bud. Same thing for this one and this one, really, that's why I left them. But you've got the older one, then you've got one bud, two bud, same here and here. Yeah, so we'll see. We may or may not get grapes or have a plant shaped in any sort of way that we want it to be shaped. The wonderful thing about grapevines though is that they produce so much growth that you almost can't see the structure of them during the growing season. It's not until winter time that people can see like, oh, you did a real bad job pruning those grapevines. Okay, here's our next one. So the way I'm going to approach this one, this whole branch is going to come off right here. You know what? I might, we'll see. I don't know. I might just leave, I think I already mentioned these two right here, and see how that goes. There's vine number 2. We've got the trunk. We've got 2 canes, each one tied off to the guide wire. That doesn't look too bad, except the trunk is completely wonky. Third one is the biggest mess. This will be very satisfying. Well, that one looks a lot better than I thought it was going to look. So we've got the trunk right here. Had I been paying attention and pruned this, initially I probably would have cut this one off and would have trained this one more straight and had my growth come off that way. But instead we've got, the 2 older branches here, and then we've got cane growth off of those that I trained onto the guide wires. And then our last one here is definitely the most upright looking one, the one with the best looking trunk here. So what I might try doing, Douglas, now you can't rub on me the whole time here or the camera will shake. I'll probably get in here and decide on one of these to keep and cut everything else out. Might be this one right here, because this one's coming up nice and straight, and then there's branches going either way. So if we just cleared out all the rest of it, I think we'll be good. I don't know. It'll either be this one or this one. I'll know better once I've cut away all this other smaller growth. But I did forget to mention, you'll see that I made a heading cut right here. So on this cane, I cut it back to where, there's plenty of room to the end of its section to grow. And then I'm going to have to do that probably with these as well, because these are growing further than I want them to. Okay, we've got this one to a point where we can see a little bit better the infrastructure of what's going on here. So if we follow this trunk, we follow it up, this is where it forks and turns into these 2 main branches. If you follow this one right here, it kind of swoops around the back and then comes up right here. This one kind of does a really sharp turn right down here. I think I want to get rid of this one and leave this front one. At this point, I'm wondering, does it even matter? Probably not. We're gonna have a few years until we get these the shape we want them to be, I think. Let's just cut one of them out. Okay, I'm gonna cut the top out first so it's easier. That one doesn't look bad at all. I mean, the trunk's a little wonky, but we're just staying in theme here, so no big deal. I am gonna cut out these other 2 branches. I just want one cruising to each side. That looks good, and I'm gonna follow it over here. I'm gonna probably do my heading cut right there. That way when I train it around this wire, yeah, I'm gonna use a little tie and tie it up like that, but that way we've got a few inches before it hits this. And then on this side, I'm gonna keep this branch right here and we'll train that. So I'm gonna take out this back branch. Let's see if we can wrap this one a bit. We're gonna have to cut the end of this one as well. Let's do that right here. And if you take the approach of spur pruning, if you've already got cordons attached to your guide wire and you're just cutting back all your canes, so you cut them back to the second bud, and then you only want to leave the ones that are going upright. So like this one's going down, I'm going to cut that one out. That one's kind of going to the side. I could cut it out, or I could try to wrap it differently. But let's get this one tied up here, just loosely. Perfect. That one looks pretty good. So, not awesome, but better than when we started. But most importantly, a pruned plant most of the time is better than an unpruned plant, especially in the case of fruit production, because if you don't prune your grapes, or whatever other kind of fruit plant that you have, the plant just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's trying to produce fruit on all these branches, but it's just too many. The root system is only so big, and if you've got this massive plant it's trying to feed, you'll end up with a lot smaller grapes than you would if you keep them pruned down and really size controlled. Now these plants are going to have a tremendous amount of energy to send into new growth and nice big fruit. I am going to fertilize them today though, as an apology for my neglect. We're going to give them some berry tone. I should probably clean up first though. They do look a lot better. We're all done, pruned, cleaned up, fertilized. Now I did end up taking the end of this big branch off. Let me show you. I had initially left this end on right here, but I decided that none of these were really facing or growing the direction that I wanted them to grow. This is really the only one that has a potential to cruise back toward our training wire. So yeah, I just left that one. It might end up coming all the way off. We'll see. This is definitely the furthest one away from where I want it to be, shape-wise, because that one splits so low. The rest of them split a little bit higher on the trunk. But we've got canes trained from every single one of them, so I'm really looking forward to see what they do this season. We actually have another grapevine in the back garden next to the barn, kind of where we're clearing it out to make a lane into the new property. It was here when we moved in, and it was trained onto an arbor. In fact, we could just go back there. I can show you. This one right here. So this one's gonna be removed because we are creating a lane through here, and it's just so old. I don't even know if it would transplant. I mean, a person could try, but since we've got the other ones planted and this one's such a mess, look at how old that trunk is. We're just going to be removing it. We do get a handful of grapes on here, but you know, since it's never been pruned or properly taken care of by me, I will take the blame for that. It's probably just not worth it at this point. And I'm not sure what the idea behind the arbor, I mean, it was backed up to a fence. So I guess, you know, if you have an extra arbor and just want some vertical height, that's one way to do it. Anyway, there are a couple of roses near the kitchen that I would like to take care of because that's where Paul's working on the mulch. So I don't have to tromp around in the mulch once he gets it done. So let's go get those cut back. And then we're gonna make our way out to the south garden, and I'll show you a few of the shrubs we're gonna be handling out there. Well, that looks a lot better. Oh my goodness. Especially that rose, getting all of those older leaves. Those are all leaves from last year. And whenever you're pruning a rose, it's a good idea to remove all of last year's foliage from both the stems and the ground around it, because those things can harbor over insects like spider mites and fungal diseases, things like that. So really good idea to clean off as much of that as you can. And I didn't have to do a tremendous amount of pruning because I did a lot of that last year. So we should have tons of blooms. I'm so excited. So now we can come in and mulch this area now that everything's been pretty much cleaned up and pruned back. And I'll just leave these kale until they either, one, start looking bad, or two, when we're ready to plant this out with summer stuff. I trimmed the roses just a little bit just to kind of tame the growth back.
Hey, I want to show you a fence that I'm building.
All right.
I made a little, I kept the fence here. There's a little pathway so you can get in.
Oh, excellent.
And do take a long tree.
Uh-huh.
I'm supposed to hit to there, here,
Uh-huh.
and here, all the way to this pot.
Gotcha.
I don't have enough sticks.
Oh, we might have to go find some. I think there's some in the barn, the red barn.
Yeah, Paul told me.
Oh, did he? Okay, perfect. The sedum pot looks way better. These are lemon jade sedum. We planted these up when we did Benjamin's butterfly garden a couple of years ago. Was that 3 years ago now? Or just 2? I don't know. They've been in this pot for a while, and I don't have them on drip, and I don't ever fertilize them. They like to just be left alone. And there's Bev. Hey, Bev. And then if we get in here closer up on the buddleia, you can see, well, a lot of last year's growth. So last year I didn't have to cut it back quite as far, it looks like. And really the strongest buds are down in here. But we still have some colder nights, so and I left the leaves in there. I might have to come in and shave all this stuff off, but this one's been really reliable. And the gator's full. We have 2 full pop-up bags, and we're completely full of debris. And you guys, I think that's where I'm going to stop today's projects. We were gonna head out to the south garden, but we can do that another day. I'm gonna help Benjamin find some stakes so he can continue on his fence project. Looks like he went to the red barn to go searching for more stakes. And then I actually made a meal plan for this week. So Benjamin and I are gonna go to the store together, and we're going to go shop for it. So anyway, that's what the rest of my day is gonna hold. And this breeze today, I don't know if you noticed it blowing things around, but it's pretty chilly. We've got a couple of colder nights. Let me look what it says now. Yeah, we've got a couple of 25-degree nights. Let's see, we've got 28, 25, 25, 28, and then it goes back up above freezing. But you may have noticed that I've got all the pots wrapped up with the frost cloth. That's because I just need to protect them from these next few nights, and I'll just leave them like that throughout the day. We've had a lot of wind too, so I feel like that's been a good protector for that. But as soon as we're past these 4 nights and we take a look at the rest of the 10-day, we'll probably uncover them and let them just be. They look really good inside their cloths. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I know it wasn't probably super helpful to see the grapes be pruned, other than the fact that maybe you guys have some grapevines that are a mess and have been neglected. I hope I'm not alone in that. But you know, you got to start somewhere. And sometimes that means really severely pruning them back, having them look kind of odd, and then recuperating them over the next few years, which is what I'm hopeful will happen with ours. And then it was nice just to get these few little areas, random areas done, because Paul is working, and we'll go look at that too, but Paul is working on, you found some stakes?
I went all the way to the right bag.
Good for you, and you closed the door. Excellent, high five. So he's working on that, and he's going to do all of these areas around the house before moving to, you know, other areas. So I wanted to get those last little things cut back. Anyway, guys, we'll leave you with a look at what Paul did. Enjoy seeing the mulch go down. It is the most satisfying thing to me. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.